Hello, everyone. Semi-retired Bob here. I talk about the carnivore diet, all things related to the carnivore diet, and miscellaneous odds and ends. I am super excited today. We have a special guest with us. Many of us have heard, well, what about the long term studies? How do we know how people are going to react to this long term? Well, I have Rick with us today, and Rick has been, I'm not sure if he's actually crossed the 40-year mark yet or not, but I know his anniversary is coming up sometime this year. But either way, he's been doing it for a really long time. Everyone say hello to Rick.
Hello, good to see you.
And then go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get on into the rest of this.
Well, I'm sure most of your viewers have seen me. I've been on multiple interviews starting last summer. I'm sometimes called the 40-year carnivore, although I haven't actually been exactly 40 years yet. What it is I started this diet when I was 15, and that was back in 1983. And by August of 83, I was eating a carnivore diet. So I was thinking about actually having a 40-year anniversary this August sometime. But the reality is, I did go on a vegetarian, somewhat vegan diet from January 93 until about July, sometime around August. It seems like August is time when things change for me, but that was a failure. And of course, you know the result. I went back to the carnivore diet and I've been on it ever since. So that's kind of my story. And although I'm not a health expert or anything like that, and I never had chronic health conditions when I started it, I do have a very long experience. And I also have experiences with other people that I knew and people that maybe a couple of them have tried the carnivore diet. But up until about a year, 2 years ago, maybe, I didn't realize that this was actually some kind of therapeutic or health food diet because I always thought that it was the heart attack diet, and the goal was to enjoy the diet, get as big and strong as possible, and then die very quickly of a heart attack before you become old and frail and helpless. So that's pretty much how it started.
Thanks for that, Rick. So you were a vegan for about a half a year in there. How did that come about, and what caused you to change back?
Well, what happened was we had Hurricane Andrew in 1992. It was in August. Again, another thing that happened in August. And after the storm, I was one of the few people that had a functional generator. So everybody was throwing away their food. They were giving us all kinds of food, whatever was in the refrigerator. And you know, vegetables and fruits, they don't last very long, month, maybe two. They don't hold up. And by that time, I had already been on what we would call the carnivore diet, meat based diet. So I had the fruits and vegetables. I put them in the refrigerator. It was well packed, a lot of good fruits and vegetables to work with. And I gave a lot of them away. My dad was very much into juicing and fruits and vegetables. So we had the generator running. He was running the Vitamix or whatever, the Oster or whatever juicer he was using. Because I remember every morning you'd hear that thing grinding away. So the fruits and vegetables, a lot of them I gave away. A lot of them went to the ducks. I didn't eat any of them because I don't like any of that stuff. But the meat I stuffed in the freezer. We had two refrigerators and we had a separate upright freezer. Years ago, we had a food service called the Rich Plan, and they used to deliver food. Well, we stopped getting that because it got to be too expensive. But eventually, the freezer was there. I loaded it with meat. So I had so much meat. My parents didn't eat that much. My mother did not like beef. My dad, although he liked beef, he was convinced that the path to health was through vegetables, whole grains, juices. He would deliberately eat things like wheat germ, and he'd always insist on whole wheat bread. And when they did use sugar, it was brown sugar. It was always these healthy things. And of course, tofu. Who can forget tofu? That disgusting concoction that not even a duck will eat. So that's pretty much what was happening. Now, I had all this meat, and again, my freezer was so stuffed, I had to use duct tape to hold it shut because it kept popping open. So I figured, well, since my parents aren't eating all the meat and I'm the meat eater, I might as well eat as much as I can. So from the August, I forget what date the hurricane hit. After that, it was just meat. I didn't even really eat any eggs. because we didn't really have any. No, I didn't have dairy. It was just meat, mostly beef, some pork, seafood, just meat, 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 all the way to the end of the year. Now, probably around November, when everybody had their power back. I think by October, a lot of the power was coming back on. People were starting to get fruits and vegetables again. And a lot of the people that I knew, people I work with when I was doing hurricane relief, they started to tell me that my diet was deadly, that I was killing myself by eating so much meat, all that fat and cholesterol. And, I was living with my parents. I was actually away for a while when I moved out, but after the hurricane, I lived with them because, we were working together to clean up and get things in order. So I was getting pressure from them. I was getting it from all sides. The girl that I knew, she was concerned that it was going to kill me. I was going to get old. I was going to get colon cancer. That's what I heard a lot of. You're going to get colon cancer. And the heart attack didn't bother me. I thought the idea of getting a heart attack was funny. I thought, it was like everything was good. Then all of a sudden, you get chest pains. And then all of a sudden, you flip over. And that's it. You're dead. You don't have to worry about anything. But the whole idea of colon cancer or some of these other diseases was starting to get me a little worried. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I should change my diet. But then it was sort of like, well, should I add vegetables and fruits to my meat based diet? I thought about that. I thought, well, nah, I'm going to go 100%. I figured I'm going to prove these people right or wrong. And I knew a couple of vegetarians that were quite healthy. They had a nice physique. They seemed to have lots of energy. So I thought, oh, why not? I'll try it, see what happens. So I told everybody on January 1993 I would start a vegetarian diet. When I started the diet, I was still eating eggs and I was still eating some dairy. I was still eating the yogurt that I always made and some cheese. Well, I felt good for a few months, but then after a while, I didn't feel so good anymore. I started to get stomach gas. I got a lot of those pains, like an intestinal pain, where sometimes you sit down and it kind of hurts and you have to move around. Then I started getting that gas. That was kind of embarrassing because the gas was really bad, especially you're around other people and all of a sudden you get that pressure and you got to get rid of it. And if you can't go somewhere to let the gas out, you got to slowly let the gas out. And then people are saying, what is that awful smell? What is that? They look at their shoe to see if they stepped in a dog turd. It's not a pleasant experience. But they said, well, you know what? It's because you're eating eggs and dairy. That gives you gas and makes you feel bad. So I ditched the eggs and the dairy and I went just to fruits and vegetables. And it didn't get any better. It got worse. In fact, as soon as I dumped the eggs, within a few days, I was starting to get headaches. I guess that was what you call migraine headache. Usually on the weekend, I'd try to get up in the morning and my eye would hurt like right behind my eye. And, I'd have to cover my face and then I'd have to lay down. And then after a while, when I got up in the morning, I just didn't feel like doing anything. I had no energy, just kind of hanging around the bed. I usually get up between 7 and 8 o'clock. I was having to get up after 9, and I felt terrible. And then when it was time to go to sleep, I had, I would get like this stuff coming up into my throat that was bitter, and burping all the time, and it was not a pleasant experience. But that was my experience with the vegetarian and I guess technically vegan diet eventually.
Well, it sounds like you had quite an adventure there. So let's back up just a little bit. I heard you talk about this with a couple of other people. So you fell through a roof helping your dad, and that's sort of what got you into the carnivore lifestyle to begin with.
Yes, that is exactly right. Now it sounds a little weird, but what it was is that was the summer after I finished junior high. It was 1983. I remember very clearly. My dad was trying to put up. We had an aluminum carport. He took it down, and then he built this big wood carport that goes down the side of the house. Well, my dad worked as an aircraft mechanic most of the time, but you know how it is in the airline industry. You get laid off from time to time. So when he got laid off, it was time to do some household projects, and I was off school. It was I don't honestly I don't remember the exact month. I know that it was somewhere around July or August that we were doing this, but I know by August I had already broken my arm and I was kind of stuck in the house. And because then on top of that, it made me start high school 2 weeks late. But my dad basically was doing this job. I was bringing him materials. I had, I don't know if it was tools or nails or what it was, but I went up the ladder. I walked over to my dad, stepped on a piece of plywood that wasn't screwed down, fell through, landed on the metal sawhorses, and I broke my left arm. In fact, when I was going through my old stuff, I actually found the sling they put my arm in because it wasn't broken all the way through. It was like a fracture. So instead of giving me a cast, they gave me this sling. But the thing was, I had to take it easy. I couldn't go out and do anything. I had to hold my arm kind of like this, and then, it was a bit of a nuisance. But it eventually healed. But actually, I think it healed even faster because of what happened with the diet. But the thing was this: once I had broken my arm, there wasn't much I could do. And then my mom, she was away. She was taking college courses because she was a school teacher. And every so often, she'd have to renew the teaching certificate. So she was over there at the FIU taking classes. So she wasn't here during the day. And I was a kid, I didn't know how to cook anything. So my dad was here, but my dad was, let's just say, an awful cook. The only thing he could cook sometimes would be meat on the barbecue. But if he cooked anything in the kitchen, you better have the fire extinguisher handy because the smoke detector was our dinner bell. That's how bad it was. Now, my dad ended up getting called back for a job shortly after this whole thing happened. So he wasn't here. So I'm by myself. I got nothing to eat. And, I mean, I guess I could open a can of something, but I started to think about it. And I started thinking about what is the easiest thing to cook. Well, my dad cooked meat. That was the easiest thing to cook. So I decided, yeah, I could learn how to cook meat. And of course, I always loved meat. Even when I was a kid, when we used to eat out, we're a poor family. So we normally went to the buffet or the smorgasbord that you call it. And then you can pick whatever you want to eat. I didn't waste my time picking the salad, although a lot of times my parents would kind of force me, well, you can't eat the chicken or the beef until you've had some salad. So I'll stuff some of that crappy, veggie garbage or whatever down my throat and chew on it. A lot of times I'd stick it in my pocket where my parents weren't looking so I could get it out. That's one of the reasons I never liked salad dressing, because if you put salad dressing on it, your hands would get all nasty. If the salad was dry, it was easy to pick it up, shove it in your pocket, and then when you get home, you can throw it to the ducks, and nobody is any wiser. But, after eating that way, it just seemed natural to me to just eat meat. So I thought, well, I'm just going to eat meat and see what happens. The interesting thing was, once I started to do it, it really turned out to be a lot easier than I ever expected. Cooking was not an issue. If you want to cook up a hamburger, you just get a pan and you turn on the fire and you stick the burger in there, and then you flip it maybe once or twice. When it smells good, it's ready to eat. If you want to cook chicken, you just throw some lard in a pot, throw the chicken in there and let it cook up. You can even boil the chicken. And the thing about meat is it's in the freezer. You don't have to buy it all the time. It's not like fruits and vegetables that you never know when they're going to be bad. You open the drawer and there's like mold growing on it and juice leaking out of it, and it's all nasty and you have to throw half of it away. So the whole idea of eating meat, it just seemed like an easy way to eat. And then, of course, I watched some TV shows and I was seeing them talking about how dangerous fat was and too much meat is going to kill you. And I was kind of a frustrated and maybe slightly depressed kid because I was so short and picked on all the time. I thought, you know what? Maybe getting a heart attack would be kind of fun. I could be sick. Everybody would have to come and take care of me. I wouldn't have to go to high school. If I could just make it through the year, maybe I could get my GED and get out of school. My grades weren't great anyway. Why would I want to go to school? So it all came down at once. And, once I got into the carnivore diet, I just kind of settled into it. It just seemed like a natural way to go. Just eat meat, and cheese and some dairy, and that's it. Drink some water. You don't have to go to the store all the time. Everything you need's in the freezer. You can cook it up, eat it up. The whole thing just seems so simple that that's how I got into it, and I kind of stayed with it because it was kind of hard to talk me out of it. I mean, once you find something you like, who wouldn't want to eat delicious food every single day and not have to worry about complicated cooking or all the other stuff that goes with it? You can just eat meat, dairy, and live it up.
Excellent. Thanks for all that. So you said you were kind of the small kid getting picked on when you were in school. Did you have any? Did you see any improvement in that when you started eating a lot of meat?
Well, not initially. Um, when I started eating a lot of meat, I didn't really grow that much, at least that I could see. The only improvement that I did notice is that my attitude towards school, it totally changed. When I was younger, I used to worry a lot about what the other kids thought. And I would try to do things that would make me be more accepted. But in the end, I was always the one that never got picked on a team and always got laughed at. Whatever I did, it just turned out to be a failure. So nothing. I mean, I couldn't even get good grades. I couldn't do anything right. So, but when I started eating this way, my attitude just changed. I thought everything looked different to me. It was hard to believe. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I know the 80s was sort of a time when people were very conscious about certain things. I know all the gals were wearing these goofy jeans. They had Sassoon jeans and Jordache jeans and all these silly things. And I had always seen that and never really thought much about it. But I remember after I started eating the carnivore diet, I watched a commercial. I was for Jordan Marsh, and I remember they were showing Jordache jeans and the silly things. And I looked at that and I thought, this is really stupid. And I was thinking about jeans more like, Levi's or something like that, a farmer out there with the suspenders wearing jeans. And I see these gals with these jeans. I think, how stupid is that? Then I see these commercials where they show members only jacket. So they have this funny looking jacket. And it has a little thing on it that says members only. And then other people had these Izod with the little alligator thing on it on their shirts. I thought, you know what? It's just regular clothes. They put these names on it, and people make a big deal out of it. So I started to see, well, what is the difference? Why are people so concerned about these brand names? And then, you had the whole mall culture going on. All the kids wanted to go to the shopping mall to look at all the stuff that they couldn't afford. And I looked at that, I thought, that's really stupid. I just started to look at the world in a whole different way. And I never really liked the music or the fashion or anything. So I totally rebelled. I thought, you know what? If you look at the way my hair is now, you'll see it's all greasy and stuck down. That's when I started that hairstyle because I wanted to look different than everybody else. I wanted to go back to the 1950s, early 60s, and have that look and that lifestyle because that was the opposite of what I saw in the 80s. So I went to school and I came up with this style. And then, I got laughed at. And to me, it was all a big joke because it used to be if somebody laughed at me, I'd get self conscious and I'd feel bad. But when I started getting laughed at, I looked at other kids. I said, you know what? They took the time to look at me and say something. All the other kids in the school, they don't pay attention to. But when I come through, they look at me. And it just seemed like it was a lot more fun. So I went from being sort of a nervous and frustrated kid to just, I don't know, I didn't care anymore. I used to be afraid of getting in front of people and talking to them, but that all changed. I got to the point where, I even took the drama class in high school and I went up there on the stage and was like nothing. It didn't bother me. So the more that I ate this diet, the more I lived this way, the less and less I cared about what other people thought. And I got to the point where everything seemed like a game. It seemed like fun. Even class, where I could barely pay attention in class. I just couldn't concentrate. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at the stuff that they're teaching me and I'm starting to see how it all fits together. My grades went from a C average to basically an A average in 10th grade. Everything just slowly changed. That was the first thing I noticed. Just a lack of, you know, a lack of concern about what other people thought, and then the ability to do other things I couldn't do before. It just seemed like it got better and better. Physically, though, I didn't really change that much. The only thing that I noticed was that I was actually able to walk and run faster. A lot of times when kids would pick on me, they tried to get a hold of me, especially then. They couldn't get anywhere near me. I don't care how athletic they were. They tried to chase me, they couldn't catch me. So that's the first thing that I noticed. Now, it took another year or so before I started to see the growth, where I started to go from being one of the shortest kids to one of the tallest. That really happened, I'd say, within a year of starting this diet. And I think it coincided with, you know, I think the puberty was delayed, and it just, everything kind of came into at the same time. I was eating this way, and then the growth spurt happened. And I think that really sped it up because no one in my family's ever been this tall.
Excellent. And so I'm assuming that just like all the other kids at that age, that you now had acne. and that was causing problems for everybody.
Absolutely not. That was the one thing I never got. I have never had, I don't even think I've had a pimple in my life on my face. The only time I've gotten them, I've gotten a few on my back. I've gotten them, believe it or not, on my arm. But I think a lot of that was just from insect bites or from I don't know what. But no, I never had acne. And that was the thing that really was surprising because, I put lard on my hair, I put lard on my face, I eat tons of fat. And they were telling me that eating all that fat was going to give me acne. And I knew a lot of kids that had it. And a lot of them, they still have these little craters on their face because they had so much acne. I never got a single pimple. And that's the one thing I could never figure out because it made no sense to me. How do you not get acne when you eat that much fat and meat?
Excellent. So you started this in 1983. That's the year I got out of the Army, by the way. So you are a little younger than I am, but not hugely younger than I am. Do you mind telling my audience how old you actually are today?
Well, I think everybody knows that I'm 55. So yes, I am definitely 55.
55 years old. Can you guys believe that? Just take a look at this guy. You don't dye your hair, and you are 55 years old. You are the age that I had my triple bypass surgery. Um, that's just truly amazing. Um, so, I've heard you talk about some of the side effects that you've had long term with this diet. Do you mind going into some of those? Like, oh, I'm sure because you're only eating meat when you go out in the sun, you get burnt to a crisp. And living in South Florida, I'm assuming every bug in the world likes to come by and feast on you.
Well, let me tell you the straight story on this. First of all, the last time I got a sunburn was in 1983. My parents, we had gone down to Big Pine Key, and I don't remember what we were doing, but I had a sunburn, and it was unbelievably bad. We were staying at a campground with some friends. They had a Winnebago, and they had this goofball little bed on top of where the driver's area is, a little tight. I remember getting in there, and I was claustrophobic, and I couldn't. Oh, it was so bad. I had to go outside and then sleep in a hammock, and then the Keys mosquitoes got me. So all night I was battling these horrible things until they gave me a mosquito net, and I was able to kind of sleep. It was horrible. But since then, I have not had a sunburn. I don't use sunscreen. Now I do work outside a lot. So, like today I was working outside, and I try to get in the shade as much as I can, but you're going to get the sun. And as you can see, I'm not completely white, but I don't really get that dark and I really don't burn. So that's a good thing. And as for the mosquitoes now, my yard looks like a jungle. I mean, everybody that comes to my house, they're always like hitting themselves, and I don't even notice it. I go outside all the time. I can't remember the last time that I've been bitten by a mosquito. And the other thing is when I was a kid and I used to get bitten by a mosquito, I would get these raised bumps everywhere the mosquito would bite me. Now, even if I got bitten by a mosquito, I wouldn't know it because I don't get those bumps anymore. So I don't know if that's the diet, but seems like it might be.
And then one other thing I'd like to talk about here before we move on to a couple of non-carnivore related things. The disease which shall not be named that circulated around the country a few years ago. Did you ever get that, and what was your reaction to it?
Well, yes, I got it 3 times. I was a proud recipient of the Unnamed Virus in 2020, 2021, and 2022. 2020 was probably the worst of it because I had a headache. I felt really tired. I had a lot of sneezing for a couple of days. And then a couple of days, it was summertime. It was like July, and I was shivering. I thought, oh, what is this? Well, after I felt better, I got talked into it by a friend of mine who tested positive, by the way. I went to the park over here, and they had the Know Me Health or whatever. They swab your mouth, whatever. Well, I tested positive for the virus. Then in 2021, I had similar symptoms, but the second time it was less. I just didn't have the energy. my knees were hurting, and I had like I felt like I was getting arthritis or something. I thought that's not like me. I never have any of these pains. So I went back to the park. They did the swab test again, and guess what? I was positive again. But by the time I went there, I was asymptomatic. So they say, "Are you symptomatic?" No, I feel fine. So it was like a 2 or 3 day thing. Then in 2022 in March, same thing. I was around several people that had tested positive. I felt tired. I was sneezing. I thought, okay, I'm catching a cold. Let me go back and get the test. And guess what? Positive again for the unnamed virus. But none of the 3 times was really that bad. Had no trouble breathing. I was not in any real distress. It was just like being run down. You got no energy. You can't think straight. Maybe that's what some people call brain fog, because I was getting a little confused. I didn't remember. I forgot to lock my front door. A couple things like that. I left my car keys out there in the duck pond, but it was nothing really that big of a deal. So, but yeah, I did get it. It just didn't really do much to me.
And you just mentioned something that I wanted to talk to you about. You left your keys out there by the ducks. Um, so I see on your channel you have a lot of ducks. How did you come to be a person who owns a lot of ducks in Florida?
Well, these Muscovy ducks are considered to be invasive pests. They've been in the neighborhood long before I was born. In fact, they've probably been in Florida for more than 100 years. So I've always seen them when I was a kid. And I think what happened, I've always liked ducks. If you look around my house, you'll see that ducks are a common theme around here. I got a duck bookend. So I've always been kind of a duck person, but as I think is also a side effect of this diet, because I didn't like vegetables and breads and all that. I used to give it to the ducks. A lot of times when my parents would give me granola bar or sandwich in school, I'd feed that to the ducks. So I started to get sort of connected to the ducks. I don't know, it's weird, but I used to love seeing the little ducklings and how cute they were. And then the adult ducks, and maybe a little ugly, but they were kind of friendly, and I was having them eat out of my hands. And I became friendly with the ducks. So ever since I've been around, I've always fed the ducks. I've always tried to help them when they're injured or they fall down the drain, or one of the neighbors, they find a missing orphan duckling. I'll take it. So I became a big fan of the ducks. And then later on, I discovered that, having ducks can be a problem, because they start to multiply. Pretty soon you have hundreds of ducks all around the house. There's duck poop everywhere. Every plant has been eaten. And then the ducks get sick and they start dying in mass. So I discovered that they lay eggs, and the eggs are edible. I was always told that the eggs were, they were dangerous, that you could get sick from eating them. But once I got on this meat-based diet and I realized that a lot of things they told me wasn't true, I started collecting and eating the eggs. And to this day, I keep the population stable. I don't ever have more than 30 ducks around here, because I'm constantly eating their eggs. I leave them 2 or 3 to hatch, and that's it. But the ducks also, they eat weeds, bugs. They provide fertilizer. A lot of my garden is fertilized and weeded by ducks. So it's sort of a kind of a give and take. They give me eggs. I give them whatever food I can find. If I end up with food that's processed or inedible, before I dump it on the ground to compost it, I give it to them, see if they want to eat it. So we have kind of a relationship here. So, but yeah, I love my ducks, and I know that's one of the things that I think makes me crazy to some people, because of how much I love ducks. But and of course, even though I love ducks, I do eat duck. When I get too many ducks, or I have a duck that is, maybe it's injured in the way that it can't take care of itself, well, you know, it is possible for some of them to end up in the refrigerator and in the kitchen. That's just the way it is. Ducks that are too aggressive, ducks that cause too much trouble, ducks that attack the neighbors or whatever, they all end up in the kitchen.
Excellent, excellent. And you say they fertilize your garden, and I have been seeing in your videos your banana plants have done very well there. So do you actually eat the bananas off those banana plants?
No, it's very rare that I'll eat a banana. I haven't had any this year, but I've had some in the past. I'm not a big fan of fruit. If I eat fruit, I can force myself to eat fruit, but The only thing I really do with the bananas, the plantains, I'll use to make heart attack fries. So once in a while, when I have my friends over and we want to have some heart attack burgers, I'll get the plantains. I'll run them through a French fry cutter. I'll fry them in lard or tallow, and we make what I call heart attack fries, which is similar to what you'd find in, I guess, the Heart Attack Grill in Las Vegas, the flatliner fries that are fried in lard. Same basic thing. Funny thing is, everybody likes them. They taste really good. I don't mind. I just don't like to eat a lot of them. Once in a while, I'll have a banana if it's not ripe. Once the banana turns ripe, I have no interest in it because I don't like the taste of ripe fruit. But I will eat it when it's partially green. But 98% of my fruit goes to my friends, especially my vegan friends. They love bananas. Vegans, anything with sugar in it, they're going to love it. They love the tomatoes I have. They love, mangoes. Oh, when you get mangoes, the vegans, they go crazy. They love mangoes. And there's other fruits around here. You got carambolas and you got, what is that other, lychee and longan and mamey and all this other stuff. There's a bunch of fruit trees around here. And I give away pretty much all the fruit that I have because I just, if I have a choice between steak and fruit, there's no comparison. Why would I waste my time with fruit when I can have a delicious steak? But they taste good. I've tasted them. They're not bad. Usually I'll take a couple of bites and that's it. Throw the rest of it to the ducks. But when it comes to steak, I'll eat every single piece that I can. The same thing with chicken. In fact, I just had fried chicken today. There's bananas out there. I mean, they're not ripe yet, but I don't even think of them until I see them ripe. And then I call my friends. Hey, you want some bananas? Oh, yeah. They come over. I'll go there and get up on a ladder or stand on the bobcat, cut down the bunch of bananas. And things probably like this big. I've had up to 100 pounds of bananas on one bunch. But with the ducks and the compost and all that, I grow massive amounts of bananas. You wouldn't believe how much grows on one of these plants.
Well, that sounds like you've got a pretty good relationship with your ducks. They fertilize the plants for you. Your plants get big and strong, and then that gives you lots of food to give away to your friends, as I say on my channel, that eat on the other side of the aisle. You have the ducks and you have your garden. Are there any other things that you would consider pests around South Florida that have wound up in your cooking pot?
Well, now that you mention it, there's a certain reptile that seems to like to eat fruits and vegetables. I've caught them eating papayas, tomatoes, bananas. They're always trying to eat the fruit and vegetables. They've eaten lettuce. If you grow lettuce or anything with leaf spinach, they will devour it. They'll eat the whole thing. So, I didn't know what to do about these certain reptiles until I realized somebody told me, because we have a lot of people here that are from the islands. They may be from Jamaica, Trinidad, whatever, and they say that down there they eat iguana. So I thought, that's an idea. When I realized they were edible, then everything changed. It went from being, oh, I hate these things, to, oh, I can't wait to see one. Then, of course, the trick was, how do you take them down? I mean, you can't use a gun in the suburbs or you'll have like 20 police cars in front of your house. I used a BB gun, but the problem is when you try to shoot one of those iguanas with a BB gun, half the time they don't just drop dead. They run away. Then you can't find them. So eventually I came up with a better way. I use a crossbow, just shoot them right there in the tree. And that way there's no way they can get away, because it just, you get them through the head and boom, that's it. And I remember the first time I tried to prepare one, I was trying to skin it with a knife, and it was a real process. So I thought, you know what, let me throw it in a pot and boil it like I boil meat. So I cut the tail and the legs off, I put it in the pot, and I found out that when you do that, you just slice through the skin and peel it off, and that's it. It's so easy. And boy, when I took my first bite, I still remember it was so good. It was somewhere between fish and chicken. Tender, delicious. Oh, what a great meat. And the legs, they have a slightly different flavor than the tail. The tail tastes more like chicken, and the legs taste more like some kind of seafood. They taste somewhere between crab and fish, depending on what they eat. So I went on a hunting spree, and I have gotten rid of every single iguana in this area. Now I have none. So if I want to go and get some, I got to walk over to the canal or go to, a friend's house that lives in a rich neighborhood, because some of these neighborhoods are overrun with them. And they dig holes and they poop everywhere, and A lot of people hate them, and especially these plant nurseries. They get in there, they can devastate the nursery. They'll eat leaves and fruits and stems and everything. So they're sort of like a vegan plague. They eat only plants and they can destroy so much. It's incredible. But hey, when you're the neighborhood carnivore, you take care of the problem very effectively.
Excellent. Excellent. So that was the story of the iguanas. Before I let you go, this is the part of the interview where I like to just open it up and say anything you would like to say to my audience within reason. Feel free to just take a few minutes and talk about anything that I have forgotten to ask you or anything that you would like to tell my audience.
Well, what I want to say is this. Up until about a couple of years ago, I was not even aware that this diet was a thing. It's just something that I did, and I did it out of rebellion. It's like a lot of things that I do. I don't really give it a whole lot of thought. But since I've seen people like you and some of the prominent carnivore physicians that are out there, I've become to realize that it's actually a way of life that can eliminate a lot of problems. And I kind of feel guilty that I've been living this way for so long, thinking that it's just an easy way to get into the grave. And then seeing other people with all their issues, people that I know, they can't get up in the morning, they have no energy, they have to have their coffee. And then they have all these medical conditions, they take all these medications. The doctor's got them on pill after pill after pill. And then they get upset. A lot of times, something that wouldn't bother me makes them blow up. Maybe they have some car trouble or something happens in the house. I've seen where the kids do something stupid and they'll blow up. It's like the world is ending, or maybe when they thought the day was going to be sunny, it turned out to be rainy. All these little setbacks, and they'll blow up. And then some people I know, they take antidepressants because they get depressed. And then they self-medicate with things like alcohol and even food. I see them constantly grazing on snacks and stuff like that. And I would always look at these people and think, you know, what is the problem here? Why do they do this? People that I know, they tell me, oh, don't you want to have a bagel, or don't you want to have a coffee or any of these things? And no. You want a Gatorade? No. You want a soda? No. So I actually feel a little guilty. And this is the main reason that I've come forward, because now that I see what this diet is doing for other people, I just wanted to put my story out there as a way of helping people who might have some reservations about trying this. They might think, well, you know, I see all the good things that are happening to some people. But what happens if I decide to stay with this diet long term? And I just want to let them know that one of the worst things that could probably happen to them is they become a skinny, somewhat strange looking tall guy with some very eccentric ways of life who otherwise has no major health problems. So, yes, there is a bit of a downside, but I think that the upside is so much more valuable than whatever downside you might get. You might have friends or family look down on you. Maybe they think you're crazy. Maybe they think you have a death wish. Who knows? But if you don't try it, you'll never know what the diet can do for you. And in my case, it's part of a lifestyle of rebellion against a system that you instinctively know is not working. And when you participate in it, all you're doing is giving it more power to destroy more lives. So, again, my main message out there is don't be afraid to try something different. You know, if it's something that maybe they tell you is not good, look into it first and look for examples. Look for other people that have tried it. Look for what happened to them. You know, don't just believe everything you're told. Just try to analyze it. You know, use your thinking power to try to see what works and what doesn't. And even though I started this as sort of a impulsive nature, now I realize that it's actually something which I think could be a future source of help for a lot of people.
Thanks for that, Rick. That was an amazing message. So before you go, Rick, go ahead and tell us where we can find you on social media and anything else you've got going on.
Well, I'm not a big user of social media. My main thing has been YouTube. I may try some other social media. I know a lot of people, they like to use Instagram and TikTok and all that, but I'm not a big fan of spending time on screens. But at this point, you could look me up on my YouTube channel, which is called Charger Mopar, which is named after my favorite car. And I also have an email address that's on the YouTube account. It's actually bobcat4home@gmail.com. But probably YouTube is the best way to contact me. And like I said, if there's more interest, I may try some of the other social media outlets.
Okay, well, thanks for your time today, Rick. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, guys, go down underneath this video, comment, say hello to Rick, thank him for his time, get over to his channel and subscribe there, because he's a great guy, and what a great example of what can happen long term. We have plenty of examples of what can happen short term, but he's one of the few examples out there that can show you what can happen long term eating the proper human diet. That's what I've got for you today, folks. Don't forget, get out there, be 1% better. Today, tomorrow, every day. Have a great day, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.